Welcome. This is Under the Sun podcast, where we talk about everything under the sun, where ideas have no boundaries, where thought runs free, and reaches the sun to bask in the glorious light of our nearest star, and grows and glows through knowledge, wisdom, and insight. I'm Shiva, and I'm with my friends ROHIT and PRANSHU. We've decided that for our very first podcast, we're going to talk about podcasts and our journey in discovering our current favorites. So, what are the podcasts that you're right now currently looking into, Rohit?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. But so I've been normally how I approach a podcast, right? And my journey into listening into podcasts itself started when I was just randomly, going through YouTube, and I came across this Talk is Jericho podcast, which was conducted by Chris Jericho, who used to wrestle in WWF, now WWE. And I used to like this wrestler. I'm like, okay, what is this? Is this I didn't know it was a podcast. Like, what is he going to do? So I just clicked on that, and then it was a 1 hour kind of a podcast where he was talking to an other wrestler, and they were talking about their previous experiences, their journey in wrestling, their memories, their stories, and it was very fascinating. And I didn't know that this existed, the storytelling, and it was very interesting. And then I found out that there's this thing called podcast, and I went online, I searched it. I went into Spotify, because apparently Spotify has a lot of podcasts. So I found out a lot of stuff. And then coming from international to domestic, right? I was taking, what does India have that could interest me. So the first thing, because I'm a huge history nut, so I was going through history podcasts, thinking would there be any interesting history podcast. So I came across this podcast called History of India podcast, which I still listen to. It's probably started in 2015. The podcast. It's a little old podcast.
What is the name of this podcast?
History of India.
History of India.
Yeah.
Who's the guy? Anybody?
Yeah, it's done by a guy called Professor Kit Patrick. So he's a professor in Azim Premji University. He's done a lot of TED Talks. So if you search him on YouTube, he has a lot of videos basically on Indian philosophy. I think he's a British guy who's settled here. He teaches history here and is very well versed with Indian history, the culture, the religion, and his thought process, his stories are very good. And he even brings in his personal experiences around the world with Indian culture. And he was very interesting, I thought. So it started off, let's say I was listening to this podcast, for example, it was on Rajput. So he was talking about the origin of Rajputs, how the name came about, how it means the son of, I think it was the son of the king. That's what it means.
Rajputra, I think from there is where it comes. Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm. So he was talking about the origin of the word Rajput, how Rajput came along, and how and the evolution of Rajputs throughout the years. It was really interesting, and especially listening to someone you don't really associate with Indian history, right? You have this British accent speaking, and he was talking about Indian history. So it was very weird first listening to, this guy knows more about us than we do.
No, I think that's actually very much the case, because I'm sorry I'm interjecting, but let me just kind of go on here. We are very ignorant of our history in some sense, because we have itihasa more than history, but the kind of bookkeeping and history writing is something which is more like a white man thing, I feel. I don't mean it as an insult, nor do I mean it as a compliment. I mean it in a very neutral fashion as to what it is. It's just like being very particular about writing things down, about documenting stuff, is a very Western thing, if I have to put it that way, right. About narrating it. I might be, as far as I know, that's the only thing that I'm aware about. We have more like oral stories and poems, and narratives, okay, which we would like to, with which we try to understand the reality, and less academic and scholarly in terms of this guy, if I can be a little facetious, this guy shat in 1739 at 4:45 p.m. or something like that, right? That's not what we're really interested in. Also, William Dalrymple, there's this other guy. Okay, he is also a Britisher, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and he's also historian of India. So yeah, we've actually seen a lot of white people talk about our history. I'm not quite sure if I should be skeptical about what they say or how much of what they say. I would like to take it as a grain of salt with whatever it is that they have to say about India.
Yeah, I mean, they tend to have a little bias, but I think I would give the doubt. I mean, this guy is very good. He knows his stuff, and he goes back as Ashoka. Then he slowly comes into the modern history. He covers a lot of stuff. I mean, the process he follows, right, is very good in terms of he has this very stereotypical tabla which starts the podcast. So and then he starts speaking about, then he has a small conversation about his personal experience. Then he goes into his, the lecture. It's mostly a teaching kind of a podcast. It's not much of a discussion. He never has other guests. It's just him explaining, going through the stories, the learnings that he has undergone and then learned from other people. And that's what he just goes through. It's not a discussion. It's just you finding out stuff about Indian history. It's very good, but it's a certain type of podcast that, not many people would like. Some people would like this because it's just him teaching. It's like him being a lecturer, he's more comfortable with that. So he just talks about that. Some people would like a discussion, but I like this because for me the aim was Indian history and I liked it. And I still keep listening to it. The only negative being that it's 1.5 hours long. So you need to keep track of the stuff he's saying. So it's really long. That's the only negative I felt. And yeah, and the genre itself being that him teaching. So that itself, maybe it puts off a certain amount of certain people. I guess, I think that's about my experience with history of India. So what are you listening to, Shiva?
I am actually listening to, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts. But one podcast that I actually kind of like to a great extent is the Charvaka podcast run by Kushal Mehra. It's got about 88.3 subscribers. And how did I find it? I found it randomly on YouTube. That's all I can essentially say. I just kind of found it randomly on YouTube. And one of the things that I like about it is that he talks about so many things. So if you could if you look at his his most recent video, which was, I guess, I don't know, a few hours ago it streamed, 1 day ago, it streamed like 1 day ago. He talks about cooking techniques, okay, and the overall quality of food. And at the same time, he's also got how Christopher Hitchens can save the left. That's like his podcast, 2 or 3 months ago or something. Then he's also got stuff science versus religion. So he's kind of all over the place. But what is interesting about his approach to and the way his style is it's very informal. It is very informal and he doesn't take himself very seriously. He could be wrong. He could be open to being critiqued. And that's kind of very interesting to see how he actually talks about these things. Also, his view on ethics, for example, the way he talks about no harm principle. It's not about actually being or doing good. I'd rather do no harm than do good. So the most important thing is not doing harm than doing good. So his views on ethics in that sense is actually really nice. And he's also, in some sense, actually, if I can use the phrase, very decolonized in his approach and doesn't have so there is a huge inferiority complex that a lot of us have with regards to our standing in the world. He just doesn't have that at all. He's just he accepts the way he is and the way he functions. And that's just, I think, it's a breath of fresh air to see somebody like that. And he collaborates a lot with Abhijit Iyer Mitra, who's another powerhouse. Another person that you don't know, they kind of defy characterization. So some people kind of would put them on the right. Some people would say that these people are not right-wingers, these people are something else. Definitely not right-wingers. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, then there are a lot of sub classifications within that, are you a Raita or are you a trad? that kind of a thing. But then they just don't care. They just defy all classifications and they just give their honest opinion about things. and they're like a fun people to kind of hang out with. So these people are on the podcast, and when you're listening to them on this podcast, it's like you're hanging out with a bunch of buddies, right? And they're actually having all kinds of discussions under the sun, right? There is a theme. So for example, one is like cooking techniques and their impact. Okay, that's a theme, right? So they're talking about cooking and the history of cooking. And it turns out that there is actually a restaurant in Delhi. They had this discussion with a guy called Bhaskar, if my memory serves me correct, about how that restaurant is completely about historical cooking, right? So like in the Indus Valley civilization, the kind of dishes that used to be made, so they look at cooking from a historical perspective, the history of Indian cooking, and they will recreate a dish from like 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago in whatever way they can now. Okay, and they'll serve that dish to you right now in Delhi. I found that to be fascinating because the amount of passion, okay, that the owner of that restaurant should have to actually do research, okay, on these kinds of things and put that across is just amazing. Look how dedicated he is, okay, to do research on these kinds of dishes, okay, and serve it to you.
But what is the theme in terms of the whole podcast itself? Like, what makes it work? Is for me, for example, for the history of India, the overarching theme is the history. It's just history. That's the whole theme. In Charvak podcast, is there an overarching theme, or is just a collection of different themes?
There isn't an overarching theme here at all. It doesn't. It's kind of all over the place. It's just that he is the only thing I can probably say that is he belongs to, or rather he characterizes himself as the Indian non-left. Okay, that's what he calls himself. And that's probably about it. That's the only overarching theme over here from his perspective. That's it. Otherwise, it's everywhere. He interviews everybody. He talks to all kinds of people, and pretty much everything under the sun, as I said.
And Pranshu, what are you listening to?
I'll just start with my journey about how I came across podcasts in the first place. So I guess 2016 was the first time I might. This is a big might because I can't recollect on what I was listening to at that point, and it was pretty much sure it was a YouTube video, either of Joe Rogan or Michael. Who's that guy? Michael Rappaport.
The comedian.
Yeah, comedian Michael Rappaport. So basically, I come from a lighter, aspect of things. So my platform is where either I'm actually listening to something that gives me value or makes me laugh. So at that point in time, I was more like, somebody please make me laugh. So I guess Michael Rappaport was that guy. And especially I was like attached to this New York kind of an accent because at that point in time I was I was couple of movies deep into the mafia history.
What were you watching? Goodfellas?
I think, what year did The Irishman come? 2019? So I guess a lot before. Who was that guy? Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci.
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas.
There's Casino and Goodfellas.
Yeah, Casino, Goodfellas. This is the point of time I like invested a lot in how the mindset of these mafiosos, is, and then they kind of have like an meta, like a unsigned this thing. They burn the picture of a saint, and even if your mother's on the deathbed, you have to come serve the family gang.
Right.
Yeah, so I was like deep into that, and then that's where kind of like, okay, I heard Michael Rappaport. I was having a light moment. This guy speaks New York, not all the way New York, but New York. It makes me laugh. So that was my journey into a podcast. So I started by Google Podcasts, and then one fine day it was all this ruckus about Trump. He got elected, right, in 2016, I think. 2016. And then I come across one Ben Shapiro. One Ben Shapiro, and he's not stopping. He's going non-stop. And you know what? I understood that if your podcast, if somebody's speaking and if he's as fast as Ben Shapiro, it's not actually hard to understand him. Because he's delivering you message after message after message, point after point, as fast as possible, so he's not wasting your time. And so this happened when I was traveling to upstate New York. I kind of went through 4-5 episodes deep into Ben Shapiro, and then
So where did you watch this podcast?
I wasn't watching. Yeah, it was YouTube. It was playing on the in the phone, and so I think everybody in the US has like a 1.5 GB data at that point, right? So I ran through it real fast. That's when I switched into Google Podcasts. That's when Ben Shapiro happened. That's when Joe Rogan happened. I think I went about 2-3 episodes in Joe Rogan, and I kind of lost track of, okay, this is too much information. I'm not an intellect. I don't understand a lot of what is happening over here. So I guess I listened to Joe Rogan with there's another comedian, and there's another Mr. Olympia bodybuilder. This guy,
Ronnie Coleman.
not Ronnie Coleman, the guy before Ronnie Coleman. Do you remember that? He's a Brit. He's
Dorian Yates.
Dorian Yates, yeah, the guy who's named Shadow. So he'd never come. You never see him. You never know what he's doing. He come on the stage, he'll win the prize, and he'll go. So I was very attached to Dorian Yates at that point in time. A lot of bodybuilding in my life as well. And another comedian, what's his name? What's his name? He's from Louisiana. I think I spoke about that guy.
Is he black?
No, he's not black. He has a long mullet. He speaks very country. He's pretty famous now, but he was not that famous a long while ago. Let me just check my Spotify thing.
Coming back to Ben Shapiro, right? You were saying that he used to get his point across really fast.
Real fast.
Do you mean in terms of the number of points one after another, or you mean the speech itself he was talking really fast?
So you could just say two at the same time, because he'd be So the Ben Shapiro's podcast was always like a newsletter where he'd just go tick 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 tick. Otherwise, there's one big subject that he wants to talk about, and then he shoots it all across. And yeah, sometimes my values kind of attached to his values as well at some points. So yeah, I went deep into Ben Shapiro and then pulled back because it got too much serious. It got too political. I didn't want nothing to do with politics at one point. And yeah, the comedian I used to listen to is Theo Von. Theo Von has unique stories. This is one comedian I've listened to have so much going on in his life, had so much going on in his life, being broke and being away from his house from early on in his life. So he's been all around the world. He has a bunch of stories, and he has experience that you can relate to coming from a middle class family. So yeah, that was kind of something I'm attached to. So that was my podcast journey, and currently I'm listening to Theo Von again, and there's Rich Habits by Austin Hankwitz and Robert Krook. It's about finance. Another one is Daily FinShots. That's Indian financial advice or financial news. It's just about 10 minutes of finance news about India.
Could you repeat those two, please? I'll write them down.
That's This Past Weekend by Theo Von.
Okay.
Theo Von makes me light.
Right.
I don't like his feature episodes because he's like interviewing everybody and they're talking only a few ones. But I like when he goes solo on the mic. And then there's Rich Habits by Austin Hankwitz and Robert Krook. Basically, Robert Krook is like a seasoned financial guy, and apparently he has like 200 million of exits from companies. And Austin Hankwitz is about 26 years old or 29 years old, and is a young entrepreneur making his moves in the financial sector.
So they talk about money?
Yeah, they talk about money. They talk about how you invest, where your money should go, how you geometrically or exponentially invest. So that's more so in the American market rather than global.
Nice. Circling back to Ben Shapiro, right? So yeah, the guy talks really fast and he talks like a robot in some sense actually. This reminded me of another podcast of Alex O'Connor. It's called Cosmic Skeptic. So Alex O'Connor is the guy. He's a I mean, probably condescending to say he's a kid or something, but he's very young. He's very young, but he's a very, very intelligent guy. He's amazing. He actually studied theology and philosophy. So that's his background. And the podcast is again called Cosmic Skeptic. And he has a very good, I would say, critique of Ben Shapiro. So he does a very good critique of Ben Shapiro, and you should actually have a look at that. I think you would like it. Critique in the sense, again, it's not like he actually critiques or kind of like does his own take on Ben Shapiro's views on religion. So it's really nice how he kind of, does that. He's very eloquent. And he reminds me of like, a very, like today's, or kind of like today's Christopher Hitchens in the making. Right? So it's very, very fearless in his approach. And very clear in what he's actually saying. So his channel is also something that I think you guys should check out. It's really, really interesting.
I don't know who Christopher Hitchens is. Did you say Christopher Hitchens?
Yes, Christopher Hitchens is a journalist, militant atheist.
Militant atheist. Care to explain what militant atheist is? He's like guns blazing atheist?
Right. So I'm glad you asked me that question. So an interesting way of actually explaining what a militant atheist is that let's say there is an atheist and a militant atheist hanging out at a bar.
Wait. So there's one atheist, one militant atheist.
Right. Okay. In a bar, right? And God enters the bar.
Oh, sheesh.
Right. So what would an atheist do? An atheist would be like, okay, God exists, right? Because God has entered the bar and saw the evidence. Because an atheist is like, oh, give me the evidence. I'm the most empirical mofo on planet Earth. I need evidence. If there's no evidence, I won't believe in anything. So God has entered. So there is God. But he would not like, fall at his knees and be like, oh God, you exist. That is not what an atheist would do. An atheist would go up to God and ask God a question. Like somebody like Richard Dawkins would probably do that. So he would be like, oh, why do you give cancer to children? Like if you're a loving God or whatever, okay, why is there so much suffering in the world? Okay, you're right. That's probably an answer. But anyways, he would ask God a lot of questions. What a militant atheist would do is that he would not ask God any questions. He would probably take a beer bottle, bang it on the shelf, and then stab God.
Oh, basically, he was waiting for this day.
Yeah, he was waiting for the day to see God so that he can kill God.
So he hates God with a vengeance, basically.
He doesn't.
But does that make him? Is it like, oh, then he believes in God all of a sudden?
No, he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't even believe in he doesn't even want God to exist. So it's like the difference between an atheist is like, I don't see any evidence for the existence of God. But if God exists, then, well, I have to accept it. And in some sense, an atheist probably secretly, if you ask, like, the question is not whether you believe in God. Another question you can ask a person is, would you want God to exist? A militant atheist would say no. I would not want God to exist. And if a God were to exist, I would kill that God.
Okay, so I believe in God, and I have like a question for this militant atheist. So, are you playing for the opposite side then? Do you believe that if God exists or not exists, do you believe there's like equal and opposite force there?
The devil.
The devil.
I don't know about that, but then I guess that duality, that evil exists again, is something which you can believe in God. Okay, like I'm also a believer. I'm not an atheist at all, nor am I a militant atheist. But the problem of evil is a very monotheistic problem. It only exists in monotheistic religions. It doesn't really exist over here.
Hold on a second. What is monotheistic and which are monotheistic religions?
Christianity, Islam, Judaism.
You have only one God.
Monotheistic religions are religions with only one God. Abrahamic religions are monotheistic religions. They have only one God, and they have a very dualistic view of things where there is God, that is good, and then there is evil. There is Satan, or there is whatever, Shaitan, if you want to call that. Shaitan or Satan is Lucifer. And then that is evil.
It's basically like a carbon copy behind, the olden days receipts they used to give you, the slip a carbon copy. So it's just one after the other. Oh, looks like it's the same thing. Something like that, right? Between these three religions.
Pretty much. They're the same thing. Tomato.
Yeah, tomato in some way or the other.
They're the same.
Shalom, salam.
Pretty much. Solomon, Salman. Yaqub, Jacob.
Abraham.
Same thing. So they have a very dualistic view, and they have evil in their worldview. Evil is very different from God, according to them. and a separate entity. So your question again was that, like, are they on the other side? Right? Are they on the satanic side? No, not really. They're not like they don't believe in Satan either.
Okay, so they have one person to blame, and that's God Himself.
Yeah, it's not like one person to blame, that is God itself, but rather it's like if God were to exist, and the whole thing stems from the fact that there is a lot of suffering in the world, right? Like, for example, again, this is an Alex O'Connor statement that's very interesting. We talk about suffering in human world also, right? Like, we are born, we suffer. Okay, most moments of happiness, I'm not trying to depress anybody here, but this is the truth and I'm accepting it. Most moments of happiness are very fleeting.
Most moments of happiness are very fleeting, yeah.
They come and they go. Otherwise, you're generally like whatever. Some people are very depressed. Okay. And then you have like lots of problems. People have financial problems. People have family problems, relationship problems, marriage problems, problems with their kids. There are people whose kids have all kinds of diseases. Okay. Right? People whose kids are mentally are challenged. Okay, imagine the kind of struggles that they would be going through, right? People whose parents are extremely aging, right? And are bedridden and have to be taken care of 24/7. So you can imagine the amount of suffering there, right? This is only in the human world. Imagine the amount of suffering that goes on in the animal world, where you have a parasitic insect, okay, that goes into a baby lamb's eye, and it will eat that baby lamb from the inside, and that baby lamb will suffer every second till it dies for a very, very long time. That's a very excruciating pain. Imagine the amount of pain that a deer would go through when a tiger strangles it and starts to eat it even before it is dead.
Okay, so this is like the animal kingdom and
the animal kingdom suffers even more. Okay, there is even greater suffering because you don't know the pyramid. There's unspeakable brutality there happening. Okay, imagine this is a creation right now on Earth also. Komodo dragon's mother, if it doesn't find food, will eat its own children. Right? You know that also. So the what a Hitchens would essentially ask is that in the monotheistic world, God is a loving God. Right? So loving God who is very kind and very compassionate and very forgiving and all. Why does such a loving God? It's called the problem of evil, right? It's you can Google it if you want. It's on Wikipedia, and it's a very important question. In fact, it's a very interesting question if you ask it. Why would a loving God create a creation like this that is filled with stuff like this? That is filled with the dark internet. That is filled with dark rooms, for example, where people pay to see other people get tortured. So that's a question. Why is there so much suffering in this world? There's only suffering if you actually think of it. Okay. Yeah, there is. Yeah, right. Why? That's the question. So the answer is there is no God, right? That's the answer that people come up. It's just evolution. That is why we're over here. And people are randomly kind of doing whatever acts that they want to. Or there is a God, and God is a horrible human being who hates us all.
Hold on a second. You said human being.
Sorry, God is a being. God is a horrible being. I stand corrected.
Okay, then in that case, with whatever information that you gave me, was God supposed to program us in one way and not give us this freedom of acting upon whatever we think or feel?
According to the monotheistic view, yes. Okay. Not according to our view. And according to our view, we have karma. We are suffering our own actions because of our karma. So if I'm suffering now, it's because of my karma before. If I'm experiencing some pleasure, it's because of my past merit. There is no theory of karma in Abrahamic religions. So they can't explain the problem of evil. They try to explain the problem of evil through monkey balancing. But karma does explain the problem of evil. I'm suffering because of my own actions. So one, you can take it or leave it, but one approach is when a deer dies. Okay, and a tiger eats the deer. In the previous birth, the deer was the tiger, and the tiger was the deer. So the deer went through that suffering because it inflicted that suffering in its previous birth. Now it is going through that suffering and is being cleansed in the process. Okay. And then it will kind of, go on or climb the ladder of cosmic evolution. And maybe 2-3 births later, it will be born as a chimpanzee. After that, it will be born as a human being.
Other culture which believes in, which is similar to us, and which believes in not karma, but the next, after you die, you live again, is the Egyptian one. If you the mummies, right? So when the mummies were, when people died, they were mummified, and they used to put all the stuff next to them, the positions, believing that when they go into the next life, they take all these things that were buried next to them into the next life, believing that they continue up from that point, they continue into the next life. So it's not a karma as such, but they believe that they used to, whatever they left that point, whatever they left their life at that point, they continue it from the next life. So it's like a continuation, not a karma. There is not a balancing act. They just continue it. So if you're a poor guy who dies poor, they continues being poor for the next life. They take it forward. If you're a rich guy, your stuff is buried alongside you. You take all the stuff, possessions into your next life. So there was no balancing. It was just next life. So it was a very different thing. It was much earlier. The mummifications, all this was much earlier, and they had less exposure to other cultures. So they used to, that's how Egyptians thought. And another point is Egyptians were not a what was it
monotheistic,
called?
right?
Yeah, there was a lot of gods.
Oh, they had I think they had Ra, who is the sun god.
Sun god, and they had a lot of gods. They had a culture, another culture. The rain god, they had the farm god. There are a lot of gods. So war god of war. So there are a lot of other different gods. So maybe it's the thing where it's a common theme where if you have many gods, right? There's this belief that there's a next life. There seems to be a common theme that way.
True, a lot of polytheistic religions have a lot of counterparts as well. Like Zeus is Indra,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
And then you have like Ra. Ra is sun god, and we also have Surya, right? Who is considered to be a god. Surya Aditya is supposed to be god, right? So there are a lot of parallels in polytheistic religions, the way there are parallels and variations on a theme in monotheistic religions.
Even Greek is very similar. They have a lot of similar gods.
Is Zeus Greek or Roman?
Zeus is Greek.
Yeah, Zeus is like...
So you have Ares, Gaia is the earth.
Earth goddess.
So there's a lot of different gods. There are a lot of similarities between these religions. Anyway, coming back to the point, right? Coming back to the podcast, we're talking about Shapiro and PRANSHU's interest in podcasts. You said you liked Fin Shots from India. Anything else from India that you've had a chance to see?
Yeah, there's one called Cost Company. I've listened to only one of its episode, but it dwells into the careers aspects of how an employee wants to get employed in a multinational corporation or a startup or any other platform that they want to. They dive deep into problems and get solutions. They talk to a lot of people who are high up in the chain. Also talk to people who are all the way low down in the chains and get the experience from them. So I believe...
company.
Yeah, cost to company.
Cost to company.
So do they take an example of a company and they do it? Or how is it?
They talk to these CEOs or CXOs of previous companies that they were working in and get like a general understanding of what the problem is and how do you find a solution to it. So that I found that to be really up my alley. And the other one very recently is the Co-Cast. This guy talks about productivity and focused work. The Co-Cast. The KOE.
What does Co mean?
So his name is Dan Co.
Oh, that's right.
And this guy is the second guy who I found, he edits his video or audio the same way Ben Shapiro talks. And I found it to be more attached, or more I was able to understand it better than Ben Shapiro himself. So he talks about, like, it's cut. There's no gap between what he says.
The format of the...
Okay, so the format is very fast so
Very
that
fast.
you can get a lot of information
a lot
and
of
not be bored.
information. So the way it's presented or the way you listen to it, you're subconsciously making an effort to download that information in your brain rather than waiting for him to say whatever he has to say. A few pauses here and there, a couple of seconds. No time waste. Bam, 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 bam. And it's I feel that this guy is good. Because the co-cast. I've gone all the way to the first episodes of this guy, and you can see I saw, this guy's talking on a regular basis, like how any other podcaster or a YouTuber would begin. But it's all about productivity and how you can scale your growth as a company, as you brand yourself, and that all sort of stuff.
Productivity. So I just want to kind of do a bit of maybe a playful pushback or a kind of like a confused pushback, right? So people always talk about morning routines, right? Okay. Like productive morning routines and stuff. Like, what according to you is a productive morning routine? We can actually do that. We can take turns and do what a productive morning routine for you is, and then probably we'll take Rohit's morning routine, and then we can probably circle back to me and talk about our morning routines
So
on productivity.
My routine has been a bit okay. Cut back to 6 months earlier, I was working for Amazon. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. or some time like that. So waking up at 4 a.m. was the best thing that I feel ever happened to me. My health, in particular, my attention span, everything was at peak. And plus the job demanded me to be attentive all the time. And so I did not understand it until I quit the job and started a 9 to 5 again. So 9 to 5 being the work would expand, I get home late or work late, or I watch TV or some, waste doom scrolling, sleep at 12, 1, sometimes 11, rarely at 11.
Lucky if you're...
Lucky, yeah, I'm very lucky if I do sleep at 11. So, and then I wake up 7, I'm already late for gym, I'm already late for a lot of things. Instead of doom scrolling, I could be packed for my gym in the morning. So that's my routine at the moment. So I found the importance of waking up really early in your day, starting your day early. Those 4 hours or 1 hour in the morning is very impactful on whatever you work on. Work on yourself. Because I had like a buffer time of half an hour before I logged in and started working for Amazon. And so at that point, I'd work on myself. I would actually listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video. I'm still deep into stock market. I just want to know how it works and where do I make the next best move that can generate a lot of value for me.
So coming back to your, you said you felt you're productive when you wake up in the morning, but now you're doing it 9 to 5, right? What time do you feel is the most unproductive time? Like you're just scrolling.
Actually, most unproductive time is the first few hours in the day. Okay. First few hours of the day is just so unproductive that I don't understand why is it so. Like, okay, fine. By 8:30, I'm out of the house. I'm on the way to the office. So we spend about 30 to 45 minutes getting to the office, and then settle down, open your laptop, get your first cup of coffee or something like that. So it's 2 hours of just nonsense. And by the time it's 10:30 and then 1 p.m. you're breaking for lunch. Nothing is done. Majority of the days, nothing is done. Me personally, I don't do much in that time frame. It's only after lunch. And that too, with lunch, I chase it with a coffee, and then I'm feeling a little jumped up, and then I complete the work up until 5 or 4:30. And then, I got to get home, sets in the brain. I stop working. Sometimes you have to stay back because there's meetings and stuff. And getting back is also a big deal because there's a whole bunch of traffic all the way back home. I spend about 1 hour listening to either music or a podcast getting back home. And it's the repeated clutch gear, all the way from in orbit to Himadnagar.
Yeah, this is similar for me too. Like the morning hours, the 1.5 hour, 1 hour is just a waste of time. Yeah. So the time when I wake up to till I have my breakfast, while I'm having breakfast, I'm still wasting time scrolling through Instagram. So until I get ready, right, those 2-3 hours since from when I wake up is just I just don't do anything. It's a lot of waste of time. So I agree, right? When you wake up early, what I feel is that you get rid of all the unproductive hours early on in the day. So the rest of the day you are more productive. Right. So the later you wake up, let's say I want to wake up, let's say if it's a Sunday, right? It's okay. If I wake up at 10, I waste same thing. I waste 2-3 hours till 12 not doing anything. I just laze around, go through my Instagram, go through my WhatsApp, then go through some random YouTube videos which don't really help me. And so it's those things, right? So on a weekday, right, if you wake up at 9, that means essentially you've wasted half the day. So I agree, right? It depends. Like some people are more productive in the morning. I am not. PRANSHU is not. Some people are more productive in the morning, and they wake up, they start working, and they waste time in the evening, which I feel is much better. But I'm not that kind of a person. I come back, go to the office at 9-10, come back, I'm still, still want to do something. Then I listen to podcast, or I write something down, or read some books, or even go through the stock market, like you said, see what's working, what's come up, what's down. Because at the end of the day, I have this, hey, what's the market like? What's the market been like today? What's the outlook like for the rest of the week, or something like that. So the rest of the day, I'm fine. It's just the morning 2-3 hours, it's just a waste of time. I just don't do anything in terms of productivity. For you?
Well, I've been kind of taking in everything that you guys are saying, and also thinking about how my morning routine was. So when I was before COVID, if I look back, when he said 6 months before, and he was at Amazon and he used to wake up early. When I was working for Tata, I would wake up pretty early, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would actually run to work, in fact. And I would be there before everybody was there at work, because that 1 hour, not because I wanted to prove a point or not because I did not want to prove a point, because I just wanted to go there, chug my coffee, and code for that hour or maybe 90 minutes and do some proper coding when nobody was there, because it used to just not be a distraction for me. I used to do that, and I used to kind of like, sometimes what used to happen is I used to make stuff work, okay, within those first 90 minutes to 2 hours of coding, and the whole day used to be free for me, pretty much. Because that morning there was so much focus, right, that I used to just do it amazingly. That after COVID kind of changed, and maybe sometimes one could say that maybe our brains shrunk after COVID, and we are not able to kind of like concentrate the way we used to concentrate at that particular point in time. But I think I've lost that touch. Maybe if I move out again and stay by myself, that thing would come back. Maybe it's just that, because you are kind of less, I would say, you are more relaxed when you are at your home than when you're living. If you're taking a room and living as a bachelor outside, okay, you're definitely not that relaxed. And sometimes not being relaxed is important, because you need that positive level of cortisol in your brain to work. Because if you're too relaxed, then you're just like, I'm going to just laze around on the couch. But having said that, there is a different kind of mornings that I've been actually thinking about, and I don't think anybody in the 21st century would consider this to be a productive morning. But it kind of goes back to, I think, what Jim Hopper says in Stranger Things, which is that the mornings are for coffee and contemplation.
Okay, so is this what you're about to say is like a template of what you do right now, or what you want to do?
Template of what I did is what I said, which is at Tata. Okay, that was the past. Right now, I first, of course, I dislike my job quite a bit. I dislike the corporate world, and I've also been disillusioned by the whole productivity culture, if I may use that phrase. Yes, productivity hype and productivity culture to begin with, because past few mornings, what I've actually done is I wake up early. I wake up at like 5:30, and I absolutely, whether it's a Sunday or whether it's a weekday, I don't care. I wake up at the same time, whether it's a weekend or a weekday. To me, it's the same thing. Unless and until I go out and have a couple of drinks or something, I might sleep a little more. I'll come back to that later. But generally, I wake up at the same time and I do nothing. What I would actually want to do is I sit outside in a balcony in the morning, like at 6 a.m. Not drink coffee. You're not supposed to drink coffee at that time. Just sit and do nothing. Take in. You're not on your phone. You're not on anything. Just take in stuff. Okay, it's doing that. I've only inculcated that since the past. I've been inculcating that back again. So it's always like a flow, right? I was in that flow and then it breaks out. Okay, and then you again try to kind of like, get that flow back. And I'm trying to get that flow back for the past 5 days. where I just wake up in the morning and I don't do anything in the morning. I just sit outside and I look at the dogs, I look at the birds, I look at the trees, the clouds, and daydream. And I'm liking that a lot. It is almost purely anti-productive. Okay, you can call it that. Okay, but I'm liking that a lot, because what that's actually doing is I don't, how do I put this? It is not making me successful or anything, but it is making me peaceful for sure. And the constant, when I've been doing that, the constant need to kind of like look up a YouTube video, the constant need to go onto Instagram and scroll it, or do a doom scrolling, or do something or the other, constant need to just like maybe even trouble my sister because, I have nobody to talk to at that particular moment, or will check WhatsApp, or call a friend or something like that. All of that is kind of like, slowly kind of like going, and I'm just peaceful, not doing anything. And that, what that has actually resulted in is I am able to, when I'm doing work, I'm being more productive. It's not like, it's like deep work. You must have heard of deep work, right? That's kind of what is happening, where the quality turns out to be very high for 3 hours, 4 hours, and that's it. And this I think happened on Friday, in fact. Okay, where I could complete 1 week. I was doing this contemplative session, this contemplative flow, not trying to be successful, just be peaceful, right, and all. And I could actually get more work done that way. And I don't care even if I did not get more work done. But what it's doing is that I'm not distracted. It's not like I code for 15-20 minutes and then I'm checking for my phone. I code. I study what I'm studying. I'm studying a book. I'm able to concentrate on what I'm doing. And I don't have to go and check my phone. I don't care anymore about my phone. And I think that is what I'm kind of liking. This approach of just being peaceful, of vibing in your own company, so to speak.
Okay, so in this vibing in your own company, do you like think, overthink, medium think, low think? Where's your brain going?
My brain is going in different directions. So it's kind of like going like, generally it has to do with like, should I go out tonight? Okay, those are the thoughts that might come. Am I being too antisocial, or should I socialize? I am thinking. It's not like I'm not thinking. But I'm trying to basically not simply observe my thoughts and not act on them.
Okay.
It's okay. Like trying to observe my thoughts and not act on them. So not get anxious because of my thoughts. So I feel like the reason why I'm saying that is because somebody might come up and say, oh, I'm not anxious about my thoughts. I don't know if that's true. We do have thoughts, and those thoughts do give us some level of anxiety. It's just that when you really start observing these thoughts, when I started doing that for the past few days, I've realized that I'm not letting these thoughts get to me. I'm just letting them pass by. Mm-hmm. And I felt a calm that is a little more pronounced than it was before.
Okay, so the RPM of the thought process is under control. It's not some race car going in your head.
Oh, that's a brilliant way of putting it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. Like the RPM of one's brain. Me personally, I have so much going on in my head. Either I'm, this is very new to me, panic attacks or anxiety. Oh shit, I'm losing out on something. Oh wait, I'm being...
You're putting it better. Huh?
Yeah. So, oh no, I have to do more. I'm being very lazy. I gotta like pick up the slack. I'm too late for this, I'm too late for that. Or maybe I still have time. So yeah, those kind of thoughts, it just runs through. Yeah, and so I'm also in a pursuit of dropping cheap dopamine, which is doom scrolling itself, YouTube videos or any clickbait shit like political.
So about the dopamine thing, you should actually look at this Hofstadter, I think. Okay, there's a YouTube channel. It's a myth. The whole dopamine, it's a dopamine myth. Looking at there's the whole dopamine myth is that there was this thing called dopamine fasting, right? If you remember, that's actually a myth. She puts it up. Sabine Hofstadter.
So that's what they say.
Dopamine is not a myth. Dopamine fasting is a myth. So there's this idea that you should kind of like go off the grid and not do anything, which is good. You should do that. It's not like you should not do that. But that is leading to this buzzworthy phrase called dopamine fasting is not correct.
Okay. So I have an addiction of Instagram scrolling.
Everybody does.
So is that cheap dopamine addiction? Like, is that...
I think even if you do have that in like, for example, I know a guy, we all know this guy called Rajaram, right? So he deleted his Instagram because he was having this issue of, I was talking to him, he says because he was so addicted to just scrolling and he doesn't post anything, he just scrolls, that's it.
Actually, the people who post the least are the most addicted to Insta. People who post more are less addicted to Insta. That's like an almost like I've seen that everywhere.
So he doesn't post anything. He just scrolls, stalks people, scrolls. Suddenly he's like, okay, I'm doing this a little too much. So he deleted Instagram. But the problem was, yes, he's not looking at Instagram. But what he's done is he's replaced Instagram scrolling to YouTube Shorts. So the whole day he's just wasting his time going through YouTube Shorts now instead of Instagram. So what he's basically done is replaced one bad thing with the other bad thing. So that is a big thing that that could happen to anyone, right? It's not like even if he's consciously removed with something else, unconsciously something else has replaced it.
Yeah.
Please go on.
For me, it's not neither a replace. It's me trying to watch a full-scale YouTube video which is like 5 or 10 minutes. And as soon as I open YouTube, I see something, okay, yeah, this is a short reel. And the reels in the YouTube go as well. Like, I'm doing the same damn thing in Instagram and the same damn thing in YouTube. By the time I realize, oh wait, I'm supposed to be searching for something or looking at this video, never happens. I have so many things lined up in the playlist that I've not even completed the first video, but this damn scrolling is just taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah, that happens, and then we also have like save to watch later, and then we have like 2,000 videos in our save to watch later, which we never come to. But there are two things that actually came to mind when you were talking about Instagram scrolling and replacing it with YouTube. First is that there are some like psychological coaches who say that don't completely give up Instagram scrolling, right? Because what Instagram scrolling basically is take that as a diffuse mode. Like if you're concentrating on something, your brain needs to be in a diffuse mode to come back to a concentration mode or something. You can't always be in a concentration mode where it's like impossible for any human being to do that. So you got to get back to a diffuse mode. So if you work for like say the Pomodoro technique, like for example, something like 30 minutes of concentrated work. And then after that, just time it for about 5 minutes where you will scroll Instagram if you want to. Okay, as a diffuse mode, like not thinking, you're just scrolling. That's exactly what we're basically doing. Do that, right? On the other hand, this is my view, okay, is that a person who wants to waste time is wasting time. It's not Instagram, it is not YouTube, it is not my tube, it is not some other tube, okay, or anything. Okay, it's not anything but our own intrinsic habits that make us, do that. Take 1980s. I'm just thinking just for an example. Okay, there was no Instagram then. There was no YouTube or anything then. You think people like the average guy was super productive at that time? No, he was as productive as he is now. He was that productive then too. What would he do then? He'd probably go to a chai dukan, sit and do gappe shappe. Right?
More of manual work.
More of manual work. He'd probably just sit and do, probably have a cigarette with a guy, okay, and talk about all kinds of things, right? Because people used to actually do that at that time. Gossiping, sitting. Like in some sense, what social media has done is it has taken gossip onto the virtual. Before, people used to gossip sitting at, I'm pretty sure, I was not born in the 1980s, I have no idea, but I can think about this, I can project it. People sitting and there used to be a lot of time. I think in the 1990s also, people used to have a lot of time when I grew up. And there used to be people on the road just sitting. Now that those same people who are sitting right now are just sitting, but they're, with their necks bent looking at a screen. So it's not that they were productive then, it's not that they're productive now. Productivity is an intrinsic thing. You have work, you just get it done. After that, that's about it. People wasted time then, people will waste time now. It's just that the ways in which they waste time now is through maybe social media. Then they would probably waste time through hopscotch, through tires, the tire game. They used to hit tires and they used to go. There's Gilli Danda. That was, and other things as well. I think Antakshari, all kinds of things. Only thing is, I guess maybe the advantage is that at that time, wasting time was a more social event. People used to waste time together. Now people are wasting time isolated by themselves.
True. Yeah. So now we had the discussion on productivity. Coming back to the podcast again, circling back. So I've explained my interest in history. So that was one thing. And interestingly, I wanted to also talk about another podcast that I've listened to. Also, it was part of this timeline where during COVID, people had a lot of time on their hands, right? So everyone started listening to podcasts, everyone started making podcasts. So there was a boom in podcast industry. There were like a lot of podcasts. So there's this one called, I was listening to called Indian Entropy. It's really fascinating. Indian Entropy. It started by a guy from Vizag. I forgot his name. It's Sai something or Shri something. So basically what he did was, what's the concept of the whole podcast is he did his MBA in Bombay. So what he realized in his MBA was there are people from different states. Right, so each episode is dedicated to one state. Let's say he takes Bihar, for example. He calls his classmate from MBA, who's from Bihar, and he talks about Bihar, like the culture. It's very informal. It's just like two friends talking. It's like two classmates talking to each other. So he's basically asking them about all the stereotypical questions about Bihar, like, is it really that bad? Is the politics that bad? Can you easily get a gun in Bihar? And the question that everyone keeps asking apparently to him is, why are there so many IAS officers from Bihar? So all these kind of questions, and how he was explaining, the guy from Bihar was explaining his point as to why the IAS officers are there, why it was, and all that.
Why is that why there's so many IAS officers? I'm curious now.
It's just his explanation, at least. I don't know what the real thing is. His explanation is that in Bihar, everyone has, because it was so backward for so many years, everyone wanted to do something good for the state, and they started preparing for IAS, and they started getting positions, and everyone following them felt, hey, that guy is doing well for himself. He had a good idea what he wants to do something for the state. So everyone started doing the same thing. So once you have set that up, and so it's like, you have one guy who's really successful and everyone wants to follow that. So that's why it's just everyone's following the same example. So he was explaining, it's just a short video. It's a short podcast. What works is that it's very informal. What doesn't work for it is that it's it's too short. Like, it doesn't go into detail about many things. He just explains it and it's done. So he could probably have a part 2, part 3. If that's too short, he could have a part 2 on Bihar, part 3 on Bihar. I was listening to this Madhya Pradesh podcast, which was very fascinating. There's this girl who's from Indore, near Indore, and she was talking about, for Madhya Pradesh, she was specifically talking about the cleanliness of Madhya Pradesh. Apparently, Madhya Pradesh has like 3-4 cities in the top 10 cleanest cities in India, and how it is like the part of the culture, the cleanliness. Indore is the cleanest city in the country. It's one of the most clean up cities in Asia, because people have taken it to heart, the Swachh Bharat. Even before Swachh Bharat, it was clean, but since Swachh Bharat came along, they've taken it to heart, and then apparently people go out of the way to clean stuff. So if anything's falling down, rest of the cities, they don't really care. They like someone come and clean it. But here in Indore, people want to clean it. There's dustbins everywhere. There's a dustbin in the bus, which you don't see anywhere in India. There's dustbins in the bus, there's in public transport, so people keep throwing stuff in the dustbin. So it's really clean. So I was talking about that, and I didn't know all this about Madhya Pradesh. And I would normally never visit Madhya Pradesh. And I felt this was really fascinating. So I thought Indian Entropy was really good. It's a short 15-minute podcast, like 15-20 episodes, that's it. But it was really fascinating. And another one which was started during COVID I was listening to was the Argumentative Indians podcast. So what's fascinating about this podcast is there's 2 versions of Argumentative. So one is the debate, which is really nice, and they get experts from different fields. There's PhDs, there are people, CFOs, CEOs from different companies, and they debate about stuff like, should brand be socially, politically be aware of stuff that's happening and be advertising according to that. And they're taking examples of Nike and Colin Kaepernick and stuff like that. right? And that was really fascinating. And the other argumentative being, put a point across, saying like, is same-sex a concept of the Western? Is it part of the Western culture, or is it something that is imported from the West, or was it already existing before? It was really fascinating. And the argumentative part of it was basically saying no, it is not, and disagreeing the thing with
Same-sex marriage or
just same-sex as a concept. Like the lesbian or
homosexual relationships.
Yeah, relationship.
Homosexual relationships have been there in. I don't think it's a Western concept, nor is it an Indian concept. It's a human thing, right?
Yeah, correct.
It's just
that's what the
is.
point is. Like, that was the question of the podcast, and the professor who was really good. She was explaining how Kama Sutra had a lot of concepts about male and male sex. And even if you go and see caves, it's a lot of male and male, but people never, put that point across. They always say West bought it. No, the culture, the atmosphere is here, sir, is that where they keep saying everything which is related to same sex or homosexuality. They say, hey, no, it's not an Indian concept, but apparently it's been there for a long time, since the cave carvings, since the Kama Sutras, but people just don't want to talk about it. So really good points about that. So it's a lot of stuff about this. There's one more point about how in 1988 in a village somewhere in India, two women were getting they wanted to be together, but the village were not accepting of it, but the families accepted. Imagine in 1980s where two families accepting two women staying together, starting a family. And she also gave examples of some pandits giving consent to same sex, like two women again, because he felt that in nowhere in Bhagavad Gita or in any culture, any scriptures that it say that love is between man and woman. It just says love is between two humans. So you just assume that it's man and woman, but nowhere does it say with specificity that it's man and man. It's not supposed to be man and man or woman and woman. So those kind of points were really great, I thought. Mm-hmm. And one more thing that I felt was good was she just gave statistics, right? Apparently woman relationship in India, they come out much more compared to man and man, because women, the woman same-sex relationship, apparently people have been coming out since the 1980s. The men have been much more slower. They have been much more conservative in coming out. They don't want to come out, but the women have been much more progressive in the thinking. That's what she says. There are much more cases statistically.
I wonder why that is the case. It's a very interesting thing that you actually brought up as to why that is the case. Women relationships have been more open while
accepting, yeah.
Like, are you saying that society has been more accepting of women relationships?
They themselves have accepted it, and then society has accepted it also.
I think women are more accepting of it, because I feel they have for me, stereotypically maybe, but for me, even me, I think women thinking process normally is much more evolved than a man, right? The mental capabilities and the woman thinking, right? So I feel that they can understand they connect emotionally faster than men, according to me. And so I think they are more willing to accept a same-sex relationship, and they understand that further easier. For a man, I think for himself to understand that he is gay, it takes much more time for him. For a woman, I think it's faster. Maybe that's why.
That could be a reason. Also, I've actually seen that in some sense, actually 90% of women are bisexual.
Yeah, in one way, I have this theory that... So let's take it back. I'm going to take it back a couple of years when, pouting on the Instagram selfies was a thing back in the day. Mm-hmm. And then you had two girls in one picture doing the same thing, hugging each other and stuff. And that's become like a trend when, if it's a girls' night out or girls meet and greet for a lunch.
Right.
They're all hugging each other and they're all...
Exactly, yes. And they're kissing each other. They're very touchy. A lot of PDA.
You would not find a group picture of a girls' gang not touching each other, right, or not, hugging, or just, in a very closed environment, like a close quarter environment. Mm-hmm. There was a day when my mom brought up a picture and said, "Why are these girls like this?" And so I was caught. Wait, hold on a second. my mom is not comfortable with this. And we grew up getting comfortable with that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Because this behavior is not acceptable for my mom. Because it's like, why are they doing this? Like, why are they up in...
Why they're so up close in each other's space, right? But generally, if you see it also, if there's a girl gang in a brewery or whatever, you will see more PDA amongst women. Generally, a lot of hugging is there in the pictures also. But if you see guys, you won't see guys kissing each other. Generally, on the cheek also. I'm not like, not generally like platonic kissing, just normal kissing on the cheek. Okay, if you see like two girlfriends, like, okay, generally taking pictures, they'll pout. They will also kiss each other on the cheeks. Okay, and all for photos and stuff.
Now to compare that, my mom has albums, like photo albums from way back in the day, like all the way. We all of our moms have. Nowhere in those photographs would you see their friends or their cousins acting in such a way. They're just standing straight, posing for a picture. Maximum they could do is smile, and that's about it.
I guess it has to do with how comfortable generally men or women are with PDA. I'm fundamentally very comfortable with PDA as a person. Okay, I can see PDA, I don't have a problem. I have been in a relationship or with anybody also, generally, I'm very comfortable with PDA. Okay, some people are not comfortable with PDA at all. Right? So I'm talking when I'm romantically with a girl also, I don't mind PDA on the street also. I don't give a shit what people think. Some people are not like that. Some people are very, very reserved in terms of, they're not even comfortable holding hands. Okay, for some reason. I don't know where that essentially comes from, but I think it just has to do with a generation thing. Like, I think generation thing, but I guess even today's generation, like my people, our age group also, or some couples are not okay with PDA.
But there is an origin factor, and the origin factor is basically the amount of options that the opposite gender has are so many as to compare a situation where you have a wardrobe full of clothes and you're wasting half an hour of time. What am I supposed to wear? So they're brought into that situation where they have so many men around them who give them different quality of experience. And then they're so confused as to where we put this energy. And the energy is going to between themselves, the same gender. And they're very comfortable in showing that themselves. Now, the example I want to give you is in nightclubs. Nightclubs used to be a place where you actually probably, approach somebody, not straight up hook up, but anyway, that happens. Approach somebody for number, for hook, whatever be the reason. But now you have a nightclub situation where these women are just dancing with themselves, like they are rubbing their cheeks against themselves, and you're literally waiting for a spot where, okay, fine, let me just find a position or a time where I can find this person alone. Or you have to like go out and about your way and then break them up. Or you can just say, I like both of you. What's the deal?
No, I think it has to do with the fact that, like, whatever little bit of dating that I've done, or a lot of dating I've done or I've seen, is that women are in some sense, at least on the spectrum of bisexuality. So in the sense that they are like, they're gay, they can be like, straight, or they can be bisexual. But most women are in some sense unbeknownst to themselves. Okay, they don't know. Yeah. They're probably like, on the bi spectrum.
Okay. So here's
they're attracted, generally, like they're attracted to women as well.
Here's another theory I want to like talk about. Would you agree if I said there's a group of girls, 4, let's take 4. And each of them has something to say about the other. Is that like a universal truth? Like something negative to say about each other. But if you take a group of 4 guys, you generally don't, or you just have something to say on the face type of people. Always it's like these 4 girls will have something to say which they don't say to each other, and will come in on a very emotional point if they do. And then if you compare that with the guy's mentality, then fuck you, I don't like this about you. It just kind of gets into a scrap war.
I'll tell you why. I feel, again, whatever, I've asked this to a lot of girls and they've actually told this to me, which is that women are not confrontational. So if like both of us are women, right? If I don't like something about you, I'm going to bitch about it to another girlfriend of mine.
Yeah. Okay.
And then she's going to bitch about something that she doesn't like about me to you. Right? So they're not very confrontational. So when confrontation happens, they become emotional. They don't like it. Okay, they don't accept it in that sense. They don't like it that way. They don't like confrontation. Okay, I've heard this. I'm just repeating what a woman said, not one, but many women said that they don't like confrontation. Okay, I mean, it is she who said it. I'm repeating. Women don't like confrontation. So if they fight very like in a sneaky way. Okay, so they will never go out and say like, how, like, if I don't like something about you, I'll tell it to you on your face, vice versa. They would never do that on the face. If things get very, very, very bad, then they might do a cat fight. But that's like at the very end, okay, which we witnessed in Hupia once. But right, but that's very, very rare. Okay, they don't like confrontation. They're very snarky about fighting with each other. They don't do that. They don't like it.
Given this scenario about they being sneaky with each other, how does one couple or two women get in a bisexual relationship?
I think it's what he said, right?
I've not asked. I've not interviewed. We should probably interview them.
No, I think also because, right, women in India, especially, they do have a lot of obstacles. They have a lot of problems with either the society itself or the males, the men. Mostly, a lot of them are toxic. They have a lot of problems. Right. So I think they kind of try to confide in another woman probably, and they have a common point, and they kind of really connect emotionally. They connect, in the thought process. They feel it's much more similar. They can understand the other woman compared to the man. Like the society keeps saying man, 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 but they connect better with the woman. They understand what she's saying. So maybe that's why they feel that, hey, if I can understand what she's saying, she can understand what I'm saying. We both have the same thought process. We connect emotionally. I think it's physically, I would rather be with her compared to a guy who's been really bad with me, who's toxic, and in India it's much worse, right? It's a patriarchal society where, you're supposed to do what, especially in 1980s, 1990s, where you're supposed to do just listen to your husband. Your life is completely dominated by the husband. So I think then it was much comfortable for them to confide in a woman. So probably why it was much more common compared to man and woman, man and a man, where man didn't need another man to confide, right? They could just drink and then do other stuff. They had much more ways to escape that. Women could not do it. It was not acceptable for women to go and drink, go and smoke, go and do all that stuff. So I think it was much easier for them to confide in other women.
It's good that like you have situations where like two women will hit each other up and go to like a brewery or something and then drink and vent.
Yeah,
that would be a good scene to capture actually. It's like two women venting, drinking. It's a male thing, right? They'll probably like drink beer and they'll vent about their wives or something or about family, right? But here it's flipped, and it's not like a contrived flipping for the sake of it. It's actually something that is happening that I'm aware of, right? So that's also there. And I kind of wanted to bring up a point that you were saying, Pranshu, where you said that what is it? Like women have a lot of options, right? Like, and a lot of attention from men.
That's exactly what he said in different terminology. He said toxic males. So that's what I said. Women have a lot of options of the quality of men that they have around them in their orbit or So toxicity is something very new. I feel it's something very new because it was very acceptable in one point of generation. Now it's not.
Acceptable doesn't mean it was not toxic then. It was like it was still.
Let's say. Okay, I like to give a pushback.
Please.
Use my own example. I've seen my maternal grandparents. Both of them work as a unit. Both of them know how to cook. Both of them do all the household chores. My grandmother was a teacher at one point of her life. My grandfather was an aeronautical engineer, bringing the money home and also doing the home stuff as well. Grandmother was the person who had the home locked down. Ghar ki malkin was my grandma.
Right. I've absolutely, I completely agree with you on that front. I think toxic in the sense that I would also like to give a pushback in the sense that maybe, how do I put this?
I was seeing this movie recently.
Societal constraints has been liberalized through the time. And so back then, if my grandmother's curfew or whatever would be 9 p.m. maximum, go out, get circulo, groceries and all that kind of stuff. Because outside it's still not a safe place. It will never be a safe place. So that's something that people need to understand. You can't expect the world out there who hasn't lived, who, they're not walking in the same shoes that you are.
I completely agree. Just the point that I kind of wanted to make before also is that when you said societal constraints, right? People generally will look at societal constraints and probably very easily blame the husband, okay, or blame a man, saying that he is putting that. But maybe that is not the case. Maybe the societal constraints, okay, that existed were organically there. In the sense that it was not like some men conspirating in a room saying that this is how we are going to
do this to some other person.
no, this is how I'm going to oppress women. No, this is how I'm going to oppress women. These are the rules. Okay, men are not doing that. Okay, right now in Delhi, if you're a woman, you like my friends only, my women friends from Delhi, they don't want to go out at night. Okay, because it's like crazy unsafe, right? It's ridiculously unsafe.
But
it's
then on
not
the flip
like
side, if you open up Instagram accounts of Delhi nightclubs, you see quality women who are beautiful and all that out and about in Delhi.
you do see that, but I'm just saying, like, for whatever women that I basically know, their restrictions are self-imposed restrictions. One,
Exactly.
second,
And then guess who's protecting them?
men, women, okay.
That's my entire thing. Who's protecting them? The men that bring them there, the men that drop them in the house. So even the pain inflicted is also other men who do not bring.
The men who are attacking them, the people who are attacking them are also men only at the end of the day, right? So so whatever societal restrictions essentially were there were not some result of men conspiring, okay, to oppress women. It were these are basically organic developments that existed at that particular point in time, and nothing. And I guess that is very important in terms of understanding how cultures evolve, instead of trying to find some oppressor and blame everything on that oppressor, and say that is the group that oppressed and that is the group that we must hate. It could be that is propaganda. I agree with you on that front.
And to understand culture, I would say and one question for both of you: do you know who Sigmund Freud is?
Obviously.
So his
Okay, please go on.
Yes, so that guy explains exactly what human nature is. How one channel of mind goes. There's a lot of information that needs to be digested over there, and this book is being banned.
His book
about the
book?
human-
There's no book that is banned. What book are you talking about?
The guy basically
Name the book. Huh?
Yeah,
Name the book.
I have no clue. Wait, hold on.
Freud's what? There's a book on.
I have a problem recollecting.
That's okay.
So sorry. But the book basically generally the book what says the mentality of human being across the gender.
The interpretation of dreams. Is that what you're talking about, Freud?
At this point I'm blank.
Okay.
In terms of the toxic culture, right? I have an experience like 15 years back, 20 years back. There's a woman working in our house, and we found that she was pregnant. And then we found out that she told us that she was raped like a few months back in a village. And she went back to her village, and what the Mahila Sangam, like the women protection, I don't know what they do, but Mahila Sangam, basically what they did was they got her married to the rapist. So that was accepted then. Like that is culturally it was okay. If you rape someone, you marry her. That's not the right answer. Right? It was back then. But now if you do that, the first thing you do is you throw that guy in the jail. Like, So 15, 20 years, the culture has like the acceptable norms were. Then the women themselves were like, you should get married to that guy because he raped you. Like, how is that
Okay,
acceptable?
I'll tell you. Okay, go on.
I'll give a lighter note. Back 2 years ago, I was driving past some Karnataka village, and it was Onam. Right, Onam is this Kerala person was wearing a white sari right on the gold border, and we were 3 big people in the car, and if you look at them, I pumped the brakes. She was dropped her balls. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. The guy sitting beside me says, don't look at her. If you look at her, you have to marry that person. And I actually thought it was true. Oh wait, the same thing played out in Imagine. If you look at her, oh shit, I got married or something. And I did some calculation and I turned the car around and I wanted to talk to this female. And then he jokes about you don't have to marry or anything, just talk to her if you want. But coming back to reality, what he said, in general terms, let's say a town, like a Chinna Uru in Telugu, this thing was, if a person has some illicit affair with not extramarital affair but an affair before marriage, the women's side of the family go to the men's side of the family if they feel fit to do so and they ask, you guys were in some kind of together and we expect you to get married to each other because this is something the public knows and it should be done. You have zero options to go back out now, or the only option is to go forward. When it comes to the rape aspect, why they do that? I would say, let's talk about barbaric value. In the time of Mongols, those guys went on a spree.
Or across
Rape rampage.
Europe.
Whole bunch of rampages. But see, what I believe in, the mindset of the opposite sex, rather than us, is more accepting of that relationship which has tarnished her, that night, afternoon, or whenever she was mishandled or manhandled. Because when back in the Mongol days, they would find them and they would kill them, and unless if you don't join us, rather kill them. And then you have a whole bunch of women there for your disposal. And then they are accepting of that relationship. I think that's genetically embedded in human blood. When you lose a male figure, be it your father, be it your husband, be it your brother, then your survival instincts is that you automatically accept that relationship.
I am not sure if that is completely correct because 200 or 250 years ago it was difficult. Yeah, they might have accepted it then, but it would have been a very begrudging acceptal. Acceptal? Is that a word? Okay. It would have been an acceptance that is very begrudging, let me put it that way, because they would not have had any other option, right?
The thing is, back then, what other options do you have?
Yeah, but
now
you have...
Police. Now the thing is, we have police, we have law and order, we have general decency. That is like a whole thing that goes on in the society. But back then, if you get raided, this is what happens to you. It's like the first podcast that they ever probably listened to. Do you think so? Because if the bell rings in their town.
But see, what you're basically saying is that if in a town, if a man and a woman were to have any relationships where they would be seen, let us say they would be seen making out in public, gone. They would have been like now. So I think
next day married.
Next day.
20 years ago, Bajrang Dal married.
Next, I don't know. Yeah, probably.
Even if it wasn't the Bajrang Dal, they would have still got married.
The village itself would have basically come. I think it only stems from the inability, to accept sexual relationships before marriage. And I think that is a problem. And I think it is a problem because I cannot articulate why it is a problem, but it is a problem. For some reason that is not how things should be. There is something, it stems, I can understand where it is coming from, and I think it comes from wanting some kind of a extreme stability in society where nobody kind of goes out with anybody, and if anybody likes somebody also, boom, marriage. That's it. The nothing.
speak of that guy.
You
Oh,
s-
who- what,
okay?
when?
It's marriage. Okay, and nothing more. That's just how it. That's just how it kind of is.
Okay, so the last point I would like to ask, you say it's a problem. Let's flip the question. Is having a sexual relationship before marriage a problem as well?
No, why would it be a problem?
Okay, in modern days, or in modern days thinking, suppose it's not a problem. Back then, it was deemed a problem. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it was a problem not only in our culture, it was seen as a problem even in countries like
No,
US.
see,
in
here is where I
early
have to actually
1900s and
say
stuff like
something
that.
about, and I'm sorry if I'm interjecting, but then I have to say something about not our culture or their culture or this culture or that culture.
It's a human thing, yeah.
Most of these things are responses to very logical practices, right? If there were people going around a lot, right, with everybody, if there's a lot of promiscuity, let us say, right, the simple consequence of that would be children not knowing whose child this is. It's a very simple consequence of that. It is to curtail that consequence that they essentially came up with, like, you go around, you get married because I can't keep track of these children who belong to nobody. Okay, that is the only reason. Okay, I would not the only reason. Maybe you can't just kind of completely localize it to one particular point, but that is just how it essentially was. This is not Western culture or Indian culture or Southeastern culture or Mongolian culture. These are very, I would say, human things that developed. Like, for example, people say food. I might be actually derailing a little bit, but I'll come back to it, right? Oh, this is authentic culture food of something like Kerala. No, there's nothing authentic or about Kerala or India or Hyderabad or something. In Kerala, you get coconut oil because there are a lot of coconut trees. The water, the humidity, the temperature there gives a particular taste to the vegetable, and if you cook it there in that particular atmosphere, it gives a particular taste. It's just an accident in some sense, right? So that is how food evolves. That is how cultures also basically evolved. Humans respond to things. You can't control the geography of your land. You're born somewhere, you have some food, you eat it. Later on, we want to romanticize it as culture. Similarly, when you said that is homosexuality part of our culture, it is not part of our culture, I feel, neither is it part of Western culture.
Correct.
It is a human thing. People are attracted to, it is there in animals also. What a human thing. It's a this thing. How do we respond to it? Even there, homosexuality, for example, in the Bible or in the Quran, is punishable by death. Okay. Stoned to death. That's not the case here, right? So I don't think these are like, our culture or that culture or something. They're just developments that happen because of human beings, and we have to kind of respond to it. How we respond to it is and how it evolves is part of culture, which we can probably discuss later on, and that's my view of it.
My last point is I agree with that, right? The part about Kerala, the coconuts. Similarly, right? How did the baby boomers come across the culture of having so many babies at the same time? Like the culture of sex before marriage essentially started, according to my belief, due to World War II, where a lot of people died, right? So what is baby boom, right? Baby boomers, as they call the generation of baby boomers, is basically after World War II there was a boom of population. Because what happened was there's so many people dead, there was so much depression during World War II that as people came out of World War II, they just wanted to take comfort in each other. They wanted to, they just had babies basically. They had babies one after another, and there was a boom in population, and all these were called baby boomers. So then it suddenly became okay to have, sex before marriage, babies before marriage, because there was such a need of population growth then. There was such a dip in population during World War II, so many deaths that suddenly it was just acceptable. It just became acceptable as the time evolved due to the circumstances, because in this case was the war, right? It's just that, hey, Western just happened because they were involved in the war, right? The Europeans, there are so many people dead that after the war they had so much time on their hands, they wanted to love. They didn't want to kill each other anymore. So
Brilliant.
Yeah, that was because of the events that happened, right? Like you said, in Kerala, it was because of the coconut, the temperature, the humidity. That's why it's coconut. That's why all the food has coconut milk or coconut in it. It's the circumstances that led to certain things. It's not. It's just that it's just happened that way. It's not a Western concept itself. It's just the things led them to be like that.
Exactly.
If the war didn't happen like that, they probably would be the same. They would be like, hey, it's not unacceptable. Why are you doing this? You should not do that. You should be with your wife, or you should only do it. You should only have babies after your marriage or stuff like that. Which was probably unacceptable in late 1800s and early 1900s in the US and most of the Western countries. So that would be my closing point.
And about like World War II and about coming out of World War II, I think we could have a discussion on that as our next, podcast. We should about World War II.
About a few more points. Maybe
We can continue those points in the next podcast and probably say something about, let us know what you guys want, whether you would like to like us to continue this podcast about, I don't know, we've touched a lot of random points, whether you want to continue this podcast on this randomness, whether you would like to thrive in this chaos, or whether you want us to say something more on what happened to the psychology of people after World War II and how they felt. That's actually, Rohit, a very interesting point that you touched upon. So let us know.
And finally, we will just post all the links of the podcasts all the podcasts that we listed out. We'll just keep it in a list under either if it's on YouTube, in the description, so that anyone listening can go through it.
Sure.
thank you. Bye. Given this scenario about they being sneaky with each other, how does one couple?
I think it's what he said, right?
I've not asked. I've not interviewed. We should probably interview them.
No, I think also because, right, women in India, especially, they do have a lot of obstacles. They have a lot of problems with either the society itself or the males, the men. Mostly, a lot of them are toxic. They have a lot of problems. Right. So I think they kind of try to confide in another woman probably, and they have a common point, and they kind of really connect emotionally. They connect, in the thought process. They feel it's much more similar. They can understand the other woman compared to the man. Like the society keeps saying man, 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 but they connect better with the woman. They understand what she's saying. So maybe that's why they feel that, hey, if I can understand what she's saying, she can understand what I'm saying. We both have the same thought process. We connect emotionally. I think it's physically, I would rather be with her compared to a guy who's been really bad with me, who's toxic, and in India it's much worse, right? It's a patriarchal society where you're supposed to do what, especially in 1980s, 1990s, where you're supposed to just listen to your husband. Your life is completely dominated by the husband. So I think then it was much comfortable for them to confide in a woman. So probably why it was much more common compared to man and woman, man and a man, where man didn't need another man to confide, right? They could just drink and then do other stuff. They had much more ways to escape that. They could do it. Women could not do it. It was not acceptable for women to go and drink, go and smoke, go and do all that stuff. So I think it was much easier for them.
But now it does. It's good that like you have situations where like two women will hit each other up and go to like a brewery or something and then drink and vent.
Yeah,
that would be a good scene to capture actually. It's like two women venting, drinking. It's a male thing, right? They'll probably like drink beer and they'll vent about their wives or something or about family, right? But here it's flipped, and it's not like a contrived flipping for the sake of it. It's actually something that is happening that I'm aware of, right? So that's also there. And I kind of wanted to bring up a point that you were saying, Pranshu, where you said that what is it? Like women have a lot of options, right? Like, and a lot of attention from men.
That's exactly what he said in different terminology. He said toxic males. So that's what I said. Women have a lot of options of the quality of men that they have around them in their orbit or in their circumference. So toxicity is something very new. I feel it's something very new. Because it was very acceptable at one point of generation. Now it's not.
Oh, acceptable doesn't mean it was not toxic then. It was like it was still.
Let's say. Okay, I like to give a pushback and
Please.
use my own example. I've seen my maternal grandparents. Both of them work as a unit. Both of them know how to cook. Both of them do all the household chores. My grandmother was a teacher at one point of her life. My grandfather was an aeronautical engineer, bringing the money home and also doing the home stuff as well. Grandmother was a person who had the home locked down. Ghar ki malkin was my grandma.
Right. I've absolutely, I completely agree with you on that front. I think toxic in the sense that I would also like to give a pushback in the sense that maybe, how do I put this?
I was seeing this movie recently.
Societal constraints has been liberalized through the time. And so back then, if my grandmother's curfew or whatever would be 9 p.m. maximum, go out, get circulo, groceries and all that kinds of stuff. Because outside it's still not a safe place. It'll never be a safe place. So that's something that people need to understand. You can't expect the world out there who hasn't lived, they're not walking in the same shoes that you are.
I completely agree. Just the point that I kind of wanted to make before also is that when you said societal constraints, right? People generally will look at societal constraints and probably very easily blame the husband, okay, or blame a man, saying that he is putting that. But maybe that is not the case. Maybe the societal constraints, okay, that existed were organically there. In the sense that it was not like some men conspirating in a room saying that this is how we are going to no, this is how I'm going to oppress women. No, this is how I'm going to oppress women. These are the rules. Okay, men were not doing that. Okay, right now in Delhi, if you're a woman, you like my friends only, my women friends from Delhi, they don't want to go out at night. Okay, because it's like crazy unsafe, right? It's ridiculously unsafe. It's not like
if you open up Instagram accounts of Delhi nightclubs, you see quality women who are beautiful and all that out and about in Delhi.
You do see that, but I'm just saying, like, for whatever women that I basically know, their restrictions are self-imposed restrictions. One second.
And then guess who's protecting them?
Men, women, okay.
That's my entire thing. Who's protecting them? The men that bring them there, the men that drop them in the house. So even the pain inflicted is also other men who do not belong in that circle.
The people who are attacking them are also men only at the end of the day, right? So so whatever societal restrictions essentially were there were not some result of men conspiring, okay, to oppress women. These are basically organic developments that existed at that particular point in time, and nothing. And I guess that is very important in terms of understanding how cultures evolve, instead of trying to find some oppressor and blame everything on that oppressor and say that is the group that oppressed and that is the group that we must hate. It could be, that is propaganda. I agree with you on that front.
And to understand culture, I would say, and one question for both of you: do you know who Sigmund Freud is?
Obviously.
So
Please go on.
Yes, so that guy explains exactly what human nature is. How one channel of mind goes. There's a lot of information that needs to be digested over there, and this book has been banned. His book about the human.
There's no book that is banned. What book are you talking?
The guy basically incest and vagera.
Huh?
Yeah.
Name the book.
I have no clue. Wait, hold on. I have a problem recollecting information. Okay. I'm so sorry. But the book basically generally the book what says the mentality of a human being.
In terms of the toxic culture, right? I have an experience like 15 years back, 20 years back. There's a woman working in our house, and we found that she was pregnant. And then we found out that she told us that she was raped like a few months back in a village. And she went back to her village, and what the Mahila Sangam, like the women protection, I don't know what they do, but Mahila Sangam, basically what they did was they got her married to the rapist. So that was accepted then. Like that is culturally it was okay. If you rape someone, you can marry her. That's not the right answer. Right? It was back then. But now if you do that, the first thing you do is you throw that guy in the jail. Like, so 15, 20 years, the culture has like the acceptable norms were then the women themselves were like, you should get married to that guy because he raped you. Like, how is that acceptable?
I'll tell you. Okay, go on.
I'll give you a lighter note. Back 2 years ago, I was driving past some Karnataka village, and it was Onam. Right, Onam, and this Kerala person was wearing a white sari, white on gold border, and we were three people in a car, and we look at her and we're like, wait. I pumped the brakes. She was drop dead gorgeous. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. The guy sitting beside me says, don't look at her. If you look at her, you have to marry that person. And I actually thought it was true. Oh wait, the same thing played out in MI Jaisa. If you look at her, oh shit, I gotta marry her or something. And I did some calculation, and I turned the car around, and I wanted to talk to this female. And then he jokes about it, you don't have to marry her or anything, just talk to her if you want to. But coming back to reality, what he said, in general terms, let's say a town, like a Chinna Uru in Telugu, this thing only. If a person has some illicit affair with not extramarital affair, but an affair before marriage, the women's side of the family go to the men's side of the family if they feel fit to do so, and they ask, you guys were in some kind of together, and we expect you to get married to each other because this is something the public knows, and it should be done. You have zero options to go back out now, or the only option is to go forward. When it comes to the rape aspect, why they do that? I would say, let's talk about barbaric value. In the time of Mongols, those guys went on a spree.
Or across.
Whatever rampage, a whole bunch of rampages. But see, what I believe in, the mindset of the opposite sex, rather than us, is more accepting of that relationship which has tarnished her, that night or afternoon or whenever she was mishandled or raped, manhandled. Because back in the Mongol days, they would find them and they would kill them, and if you don't join us, they'd rather kill them. And then you have a whole bunch of women there for your disposal. And then they are accepting of that relationship. I think that's genetically embedded in human blood. Ki when you lose a male figure, be it your father, be it your husband, be it your brother, then your survival instincts is that you automatically accept that relationship.
I am not sure if that is completely correct, because 200 or 250 years ago it was difficult. Yeah, they might have accepted it then, but it would have been a very begrudging acceptal. Acceptal, is that a word?
Let's make it a word.
Okay. It would have been an acceptance that is very begrudging, let me put it that way, because they would not have had any other option, right?
The thing is, back then, what other options do you have? Now we have police. Well, now the thing is, we have police, we have law and order, we have general decency. That is like a whole thing that goes around in the society. But back then, if you get raided, this is what happens to you. Is like the first podcast that they ever probably listened to. Do you think so? Because if the bell rings in their town.
But see, what you're basically saying is that if in a town, if a man and a woman were to have any relationships where they were to be seen, let us say they were to be seen making out in public, gone. There would have been like now. So I think next day.
2 years ago, Bajrang Dal raised their marriage.
Next, I don't know. Yeah, probably.
Even if it wasn't the Bajrang Dal, they would have still got married.
The village itself would have basically come. I think it only stems from the inability, to accept sexual relationships before marriage. And I think that is a problem. And I think it is a problem because I cannot articulate why it is a problem, but it is a problem. For some reason that is not how things should be. There is something um, it stems, I can understand where it is coming from, and I think it comes from wanting some kind of a extreme stability in society where nobody kind of goes out with anybody, and if anybody likes somebody also, boom, marriage, that's it. The nothing
Speak of that guy.
you okay, it's marriage, okay, and nothing more. That's just how it kind of is.
Okay, so the last point I would like to ask, you say it's a problem. Let's flip the question. Is having a sexual relationship before marriage a problem as well?
No, why would it be a problem?
Okay, in modern days, in modern days thinking, suppose it's not a problem. Back then, it was deemed a problem. Am I?
Yeah, it was a problem not only in our culture, it was seen as a problem even in countries
No,
like US.
see,
in
here is where I have
early
to actually
1900s and
say
stuff like
something about, I know I'm sorry if I'm interjecting, but then I have to say something about not our culture or their culture or this culture or that culture.
that. It's a human thing, yeah.
Most of these things are responses to very logical practices, right? If there were people going around a lot, right, with everybody, if there's a lot of promiscuity, let us say, right, the simple consequence of that would be children not knowing whose child this is. It's a very simple consequence of that. It is to curtail that consequence that they essentially came up with, like, you go around, you get married because I can't keep track of these children who belong to nobody. Okay, that is the only reason. Okay, I would not the only reason. Maybe you can't just kind of completely localize it to one particular point, but that is just how it essentially was. This is not Western culture or Indian culture or Southeastern culture or Mongolian culture. These are very, I would say, human things that developed. Like, for example, people say food. I might be actually derailing a little bit, but I'll come back to it, right? Oh, this is authentic culture food of something like Kerala. No, there's nothing authentic or about Kerala or India or Hyderabad or something. In Kerala, you get coconut oil because there are a lot of coconut trees. The water, the humidity, the temperature there gives a particular taste to the vegetable. And if you cook it there in that particular atmosphere, it gives a particular taste. It's just an accident in some sense, right? So that is how food evolves. That is how cultures also basically evolved. Humans respond to things. You can't control the geography of your land. You're born somewhere, you have some food, you eat it. Later on, we want to romanticize it as culture. Similarly, when you said that is homosexuality part of our culture, it is not part of our culture, I feel, neither is it part of Western culture. It is a human thing. People are attracted to, it is there in animals also. What a human thing. It's a this thing. How do we respond to it? Even there, homosexuality, for example, in the Bible or in the Quran is punishable by death. Okay. Stoned to death. That's not the case here. Right? So I don't think these are like, our culture or that culture or something. They're just developments that happen because of human beings, and we have to kind of respond to it. How we respond to it is and how it evolves is part of culture, which we can probably discuss later on, and that's my view of it.
My last point is I agree with that, right? The part about Kerala, the coconuts. Similarly, right? How did the baby boomers come across the culture of having so many babies at the same time? Like the culture of sex before marriage essentially started, according to my belief, due to World War II, where a lot of people died, right? So what is baby boom, right? Baby boomers, as they call the generation of baby boomers, is basically after World War II, there was a boom of population. Because what happened was there's so many people dead, there was so much depression during World War II that as people came out of World War II, they just wanted to take comfort in each other. They wanted to, they just had babies basically. They had babies one after another, and there was a boom in population, and all these were called baby boomers. So then it suddenly became okay to have, sex before marriage, babies before marriage, because there was such a need of population growth then. There was such a dip in population during World War II, so many deaths that suddenly it was just acceptable. It just became acceptable as the time evolved due to the circumstances, because in this case was the war, right? It's just that, hey, Western just happened because they were involved in the war, right? The Europeans, there were so many people dead that after the war they had so much time on their hands. They wanted to love. They didn't want to kill each other anymore. So yeah, that was because of the events that happened, right? Like you said, in Kerala, it was because of the coconut, the temperature, the humidity. That's why it's coconut. That's why all the food has coconut milk or coconut in it. Is the circumstances that led to certain things. It's not. It's just that it's just happened that way. It's not a Western concept itself. It's just the things led them to be like that. If the war didn't happen like that, they probably would be the same. They would be like, hey, it's not unacceptable. Why are you doing this? You should not do that. You should be with your wife, or you should only do it. You should only have babies after your marriage or stuff like that. Which was probably unacceptable in the late 1800s and early 1900s in the US and most of the Western countries. So that would be my closing point.
And about like World War II and about coming out of World War II, I think we could have a discussion on that as our next, podcast.
There's
We should
a lot
about
more
World
to
War
discuss
II.
about. A few more points about today's. Maybe we'll.
We can continue those points in the next podcast and probably say something about, let us know what you guys want, whether you would like to like us to continue this podcast about, I don't know, we've touched a lot of random points, whether you want to continue this podcast on this randomness, whether you would like to thrive in this chaos, or whether you want us to say something more on what happened to the psychology of people after World War II and how they felt. That's actually, Rohit, a very interesting point that you touched upon. So let us know.
And finally, we will just post all the links of the podcasts all the podcasts that we listed out. We'll just keep it in a list under either if it's on YouTube, in the description, so that anyone listening can go through it.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye bye.